the school year. Make a presentation to the class.
Welcome. It's good to see you here.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Really excited.
Cool.
Did you get your pin?
Yeah, I got my pin.
Isn't that the neatest?
Yes. Feels very official now.
I lost the back into one,
Oh, no.
but Keena came up with another one. She's amazing like that.
Agenda.
Yeah, I just opened. And then
So I can get there from Gmail or from email.
All right, it looks like it is 4 o'clock. Everyone is present and accounted for. I will call this meeting to order. Good evening, January 2nd, 2024, council meeting. Ms. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Counselor Ostrin?
Here.
Ostrin, sorry. Counselor Payne?
here.
Counselor Pinkston?
Here.
Counselor Snook?
Here.
Counselor Wade?
Here.
And I'll take the first step in welcoming Counselor Oshrin to the dais.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's nice to be here.
Is there a motion to approve or amend the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
All in favor say aye, any opposed say no.
Aye.
Motion passes. So this meeting is divided into several sections, including an organizational meeting where council will select its mayor and vice mayor, a work session to hear reports that require no vote, a closed meeting if needed, and then the regular council business meeting. As city manager, I will fill the role of presiding officer until council elects a mayor, which I think we've decided that we'll get through this work session, and then we will allow there to be a recess, and then we will have the new mayor preside of the business meeting at 6:30. So, the next order of business is the election of mayor and vice mayor for 2-year terms ending December 31st, 2025. Both positions are elected by majority vote of the city council. The person elected to serve as mayor will preside over city council meetings, may also call special meetings, make some appointments to advisory boards, and serve as the head of government for ceremonial purposes and official functions. The vice mayor substitutes whenever the mayor is not available. The members of city council will be given an opportunity to nominate an individual councilor to serve as council's presiding officer and mayor, and may make brief remarks in support of the nomination up to 2 minutes. Following a nomination, I will call for a second. Once the nomination has been seconded, the nominee will be given the opportunity to accept or decline the nomination. I will then call for any additional nominations. If any nomination fails to receive a second, that nomination fails and will not be voted upon. Once all nominations are completed, the clerk of council will conduct a roll call vote, and each member will be asked to identify one specific nominee for whom the member is casting his or her vote. In the event that no nominee receives a majority vote, the clerk of council will call for a revote on the 2 nominees with the most votes. We will repeat the process for vice mayor. I now open the floor for nominations for the position of mayor. Self-nominations are acceptable.
Yes, I would move for Vice Mayor Juan Diego Wade to be our next mayor.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, the nomination.
Okay. Councilor Pinkston, is there anything you'd like to offer in regards to your nomination?
Yes, I've had the privilege of working with Juan Diego Wade for a number of years now. I've obviously, prior to him joining council, he's served this community in so many different ways. I think that he's taken the last 2 years to sort of learn the ropes of what's involved and sort of keeping an eye on Mr. Snook and what he can learn from him. And I think that he's brought his trademark kindness, compassion, but also willingness to really roll up his sleeves and get good work done over the course of the last 2 years. And I think that he will be able to leverage his experience over the last 2 years, but over 30 years prior to that, I guess, Juan, in terms of your work in the community. And so I think Juan would make a fantastic mayor.
All right. Counselor Wade, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations for the position of mayor are now closed. Ms. Thomas, will you please call for a roll call vote?
Counselor Oshron,
Yes? Yay?
or you can say Mr. Wade's name,
Oh.
or if, I guess since we only have one nomination, you can say yes or no. Yeah. Okay. Counselor Payne,
Yes.
Counselor Pinkston,
Yes.
Counselor Snook,
Yes.
and Counselor Wade.
Yes.
Congratulations.
By a vote of 5-0, council has selected Juan Diego Wade as mayor of the city of Charlottesville for the 2-year term ending December 31st, 2025. Congratulations. I now open the floor for nominations for the position of vice mayor. Self-nominations are acceptable.
I'd like to nominate Counselor Pinkston as vice mayor.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Mayor Wade.
Yes, I have likewise known Mr. Pinkston for several years. We have worked together in many capacities over the last few years, and we ran together. We have worked up many issues as counselors over the last couple of years. I've seen Brian really, pull up his sleeves using his professional expertise when it comes to particular capital projects. He was really the shepherd behind the scenes of getting the Beaufort renovation projects on track, and so I think that he would make an excellent vice mayor.
Thank you.
Do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, the nominations for the position of vice mayor are now closed. Ms. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Counselor Oshron,
Yes.
Counselor Payne,
Yes.
Counselor Pinkston,
Yes.
Counselor Snook,
Yes.
Counselor Wade.
Yes.
By a vote of 5-0, Councilor Brian Pinkston has now been selected as the vice mayor of the city of Charlottesville for the 2-year term ending December 31st, 2025.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And next, my script says that I am supposed to allow each of you newly elected individuals a few words if you would like to speak to your public. So, Mayor Wade.
First of all, thank you, Brian, for your kind words, and Lloyd, thank you for your 2 years of leadership. I learned a lot from you on how to lead the meeting, and I'm honored. I love this community. I've served it since a student here in '88 in the planning school, and continue on in different capacities. I love this city, I love this community, and I often tell people I'm a humble public servant, and this allows me to do it in a lot different capacity than I thought I did when I first came to this community. But things happen, and I'm here on council and now as mayor, and I'm going to use my position to continue to move this city forward, and I'm looking forward to whatever we have to encounter. I know that we have a lot of important things that we want to accomplish over the next few years, and I'm going to lean on my counselors and staff to assist me, because I'm just like I tell people, I'm a practicing Christian because I have so much to learn, and I'm still learning. I want to be a practicing counselor because I have a lot to learn, and I will willingly admit when I'm wrong and move forward and learn from it. So thank you so much.
Vice Mayor Pinkston.
Yes, I just want to say how much I have enjoyed working with this team, and I'm looking forward to working with Councilwoman Oshron, and how much I admire and respect Councilor Payne. and the other folks here. The last 2 years have been, I think, really eventful and momentous in terms of what we've done, and a lot of that is due to your leadership, sir. Thank you for that. I won't recount all the things that have happened over the last year, but the zoning ordinance was just the last of many, many things that happened. And I feel really optimistic about where the city is and where it's going. And one of the things I'll commit to everyone here as vice mayor is to advance your own priorities. If there are things that are important to you, housing or transit or whatever, I want to be your advocate. I want to help push things forward. I feel like, I just feel like we've gotten a lot done, and I'm confident we'll get even more done for the city and people of Charlottesville in the next 2 years.
Before we move on,
Yes, sir.
Could I just say a few words?
Sure.
2 years ago, when I asked you all to support me for mayor, I said that I had two main goals. The first was to hire a good city manager, and the second was to rebuild the team. We got off to a great start by choosing Michael Rogers as our interim city manager. We followed up with another good decision to hire Sam Sanders as our permanent city manager. And over the last couple of years, we've made big strides in rebuilding the team. We hired a new city attorney, we hired a new police chief, a new fire chief. The city manager's office is finally going to be fully staffed. Middle management positions are getting filled. The severe shortage of police officers is just about remedied. In short, we are rebuilding our capacity to govern, which a couple of years ago was, I think, seriously in question. We had some discussions where we said, who's going to be around to turn out the lights when we leave the room? We move forward substantively. We move forward with Crescent Hall renovations, the redevelopment of South First Street, and Friendship Court, now called Kindlewood. We've allocated more than $10 million a year towards affordable housing efforts. We have approved plans for construction of about 1,000 more units of market rate housing, and we've adopted a far-reaching zoning ordinance that should allow us to make progress toward our goal of a carbon-neutral Charlottesville by 2050. We committed $90 million to Buford, the middle school renovation, a project that had been needed for a decade or more, but this council found a way, with the help of our staff, found a way to make this happen. Along the way, we also adopted a collective bargaining ordinance. We rewrote the affordable housing policies. We amended the human rights ordinance and the police civilian oversight ordinance. And with the help from the students from Andy Block's law students class, we amended the property tax relief ordinance to be able to help more people. We have a number of major studies underway: the decarbonization study of our gas utility, the study to create a regional transit authority, and we took some steps that we will need to follow up on. The purchase of Zero East High Street is one. The purchase of K-Tech is another. And we saw clearly the need to develop a shelter for our unhoused population with the ability to provide necessary services on site. That's all just in the last 2 years. I hope you all, anybody watching, realizes just how much progress that actually represents. We did this all with a lot of meetings, a lot of hard work, a lot of study, a lot of discussion between meetings, and a lot of compromise. I want to thank you, Juan, Brian, Michael, as well as Sina McGill and Leah Purrier for everyone's friendship, for the willingness to have difficult conversations in good faith, and for the commitment that everyone has shown to the city of Charlottesville. And I have every confidence that Natalie Oshrin will do exactly the same and follow in their good footsteps. When people have expressed to me their appreciation for how things have been going for the last 2 years, I've always responded by saying, I will take exactly 1/5 of the credit, because that's about the extent of it. Everybody on this council has been very working in sync with one another, very much in sync. The credit goes to all of you, as well as to our very capable staff from the city manager on down. I've enjoyed being your mayor for the last 2 years, and I look forward to being a backbencher again.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. All right, just as a reminder for those that may have tuned in after we started, council will take their new seats during the business section. I have the pleasure and great fortune of continuing to sit in the middle seat right now. We are going to hear a series of budget presentations this evening, as we have been for the past few months. This is going to conclude staff presentations for various preparation conversations that are underway in support of the new budget that we are putting together, and then I will be bringing that to this body for your consideration. The first presentation is the voter registrar's office.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
I have a presentation. I don't know if that will show up here for you all to
It should.
view.
There you go.
Here we go. All right, so to introduce myself, I'm Taylor. I'm the registrar for the City of Charlottesville. I think I've met everyone at this point now, but just in case. Our goal in Here we go. So in our office, our goal is to provide equal opportunity for anyone that is a registered voter or has the opportunity to be a registered voter in the City of Charlottesville, and to conduct elections at the highest level and with being as transparent with the public as possible. In our office, it's fairly small. We have 5 total staff, not including when we bring in election officers or temporary workers during each election season. But we have myself as the director of elections, and then we have a chief deputy registrar, Josh Jenkins, 2 senior deputy registrars, Catherine Mahler and Laurel Isachiko, and then a deputy registrar, Grant Armstrong. Last year, we actually made a big stride. We used to have 8 positions, 2 of which were full-time and 6 of which were long-term temps, 30 to 39 hours. We were able to wait as people were leaving and retiring and not filling those positions. That way we could get everyone in our office full benefits, and they are now full-time employees. So we're not looking to expand our staffing anymore. We have a really great core group in our office. So, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, next year is a presidential election year. This is when it is very taxing on our office, and costs increase significantly. So if you can look at our budgets here, that is what the major increase is from the adopted budget in fiscal year 2024 to the proposed budget for 2025. It is mainly due to election officer need at the polling places. In a typical election, election officers cost us about $20,000 to $30,000 per election just to staff all of the polling places. That more than doubles during a presidential year. So for example, in 2020, election officers just to work election day themselves cost around $60,000, and that is not including temporary staff members for our office as well. So it significantly increases there, as well as with the expansion of having early in-person voting and absentee voting. We send out 5 times as many mail ballots to voters. We have, it's typically around 80% turnout, where in other elections we can get anywhere from 30% to 50% turnout. So just a lot more need and a lot more staffing and capabilities, as well as supplies and materials. And in here, our personnel, again, we're not asking for any additional staffing for full-time. It is just our operating budget, so to be able to operate at the polls on election day as well as in our office in preparation of that. For any new requests or challenges for this coming year, so for a new request, we had put in a CIP request for new voting equipment. So our voting equipment we purchased in 2015, and that does need to be repurchased or upgraded in a 10 to 12 year span. We have not had any issues with ours, luckily, but that is just something that to have on the pipeline that is around a $300,000 to $400,000 investment. It's not something we're looking to have for next year. I just know that it had been put in the CIP request, so to have this here for you all. As well as if ranked choice voting is adopted for the local elections in 2025, we would need the funding to cover those operating costs. We're unsure of what the actual cost may be. We're estimating somewhere around $50,000. We did have a proposed request in for that as well, so if it is something that council does decide to move forward with, just letting you all know that's not something that we could cover with our requested budget. And then challenges. It's a presidential year. 2024, it's going to be tough, but that is what we do. That is why we're here every day. We have a really great staff, really great team. It just takes a lot more hands, a lot more bodies to get everything accomplished with. I'm sure most of you remember being around in 2020. You saw the lines of 500 people outside of our office where they were waiting a couple hours to be able to come in and vote. And our goal is for that to not to have to happen again. So we need more people. We need to be better prepared and getting people in and out out and moving through our office quickly. Because we are expecting still to vote somewhere between 8,000 to 12,000 people in person just in our small office during that period. Questions do you all have for me?
How did I take it that the redistricting within the city went very well. That was this past election, correct? The first?
So the first one was actually the June primary. This was the
Got
first
it.
general with that.
Got it, yeah. But it apparently went very well.
It did. It went very well. Our new precincts, I think voters are liking. Jackson Bay and Charlottesville High School. We are still getting some confusion with voters. Don't get me wrong. It hasn't been perfect. We're still definitely getting confusion with voters thinking that, well, I just went to Walker and they said I have to go over to Charlottesville High.
Yeah.
We did send out the mailers, but we're going to really do a larger campaign. Our goal is for this year because it's going to be, some people only come out and vote in presidential elections. So it may be their first time voting at their new polling place. So the goal is to do a lot more public outreach and send out an additional mailer to all voters as well, just notifying them in case you weren't aware, this is where you vote at.
Yeah, well, kudos to you and your team for pulling that off.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the bulk of the sort of quote extra money y'all are going to need this year is specifically due to the I guess increased demand for your services, as it were,
Correct.
with the presidential election.
Correct, yeah. Typically in presidential
Both
year,
the primary and the general, I guess.
this is actually just going to be for the general. So the primaries fall under the fiscal year we're currently under. So the presidential primary, we start voting in 2 weeks. So be prepared. We start voting
my
on
goodness.
January 19th in our office for the presidential primary, March 5th, Super Tuesday. So that's on this budget cycle, as well as our June primary will also be on this budget cycle. So this is just for the presidential general election.
And is it when you, so are you hiring more people to sort of staff up during that period, or how does that work?
So we do, you may have heard it before, a lot of times we'll have to do actually public outreach to get election officers to sign up. So everyone that you see at your polling place on election day, they're all election officers. They typically work for the day, as well as they do 2 training sessions prior to election day. But then anyone that also assists with early voting in our office. So it used to be that just our staff handled early voting and did the checking in of voters, as well as issuing ballots, going over instructions. But now we actually have election officers staff that. Because our office or our staff was not able to get our work completed. So, we have third-party registration drives that happen. For example, if there's one on UVA campus, they will come in with a stack of registrations this thick, and we were not being able to get them done in a timely manner, with our staff also having to check in 500 voters during the day.
So these staff are paid just for those?
Correct.
Okay,
By the hour during that period.
got it. Thank you.
So I just had a quick follow-up.
Yes.
Do you, we just want to make sure you have what you need. Is your spacing okay? I know we get the kind of the surges during elections. Do you feel like the space that you have at the annex is sufficient?
I do. I mean, we'll never say no if we had more space, but we can function and we can operate properly where we are. We would never say no to more, but for this year, next year, we're totally fine.
Thank you.
Did you have any specific data on the number of people who were turned away from a polling location because of their confusion over?
Actually, one of my precincts had that, and it was, I believe, Johnson, because Johnson, that area, so where Tonsor was removed, and then a lot of Tonsor went into Buford, a lot of Buford went into Johnson. I believe that they had between 20 and 30 people that had to shift precincts. That was the only one that actually kept track of that, and we said, oh, that would have been a good idea to keep track of at all of the places, but we did not think about it until afterwards. But they just did it out of their own curiosity, just our election officers decided to.
Yeah, and obviously that primary electorate's going to be very different than the general one.
Absolutely.
Are you having any still concerns over the amount of people who may be confused on election day in terms of additional education being needed, or?
Yes and no. We still expect there to be some people that are going to go to the wrong polling place because this will be their first election voting at their new one, which is why we want to make sure that we do an additional ad. We want to make sure that we're doing more news conferences with this, as well as doing one additional mailer. So we did 2 mailers last year, and we're hoping to do one just specific for this. We automatically do all of the mailers for the upcoming presidential elections, but having one specific to just saying, reminder, this is your new polling place.
And I know at least my intention, I think council's intention is still to move forward with ranked choice voting. Is that something at this point that you feel like for 2025, if that funding is in place, to do the outreach and education that's feasible, or do you still have any concerns about the timeline of implementation?
Not necessarily about the timeline of the implementation of ranked choice voting. I still have concerns about the approval of ranked choice voting and approval of the software that I've had. I don't think anything has changed in that realm, but not in regards to the timeline. So as long as we had the funding, our staff's going to do what we can do to make sure it's a functional and successful election. It's just a few of the legalities is what concerns me.
Just to refresh my memory, that was a state agency that like hasn't, I forget the terminology, like hadn't.
So, for example, there is the software that you would use. It's not run through our typical, so all of the data comes out of our scanners. The scanner can only run the first round of results from ranked choice voting, and everything after that is put into a set of software. So the tabulation for that software is then output, where it goes through the number of rankings and the number of cycles that it needs to be given. And all voting equipment has to be approved by the state and certified by the state. Ranked choice voting, because it's just a software we're using, it's not attached to any form of equipment. Because it's software, it does not have to be certified, because that's not specifically written in the code. To me, that's very concerning that it is not certified. The state says that it is fine because it is not required to be. I think that's putting a lot more of the responsibility and legalities and potential concerns onto the locality rather than the state, because they were not required to certify.
Thank you.
Was that extra mailer going out before the primary or the general?
It will be, so our goal is to have it go out at some point this summer. I'm not sure if it will be before the June primary or before specifically the general, but it won't be before the March primary.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No questions.
All right.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.
Next up, Clerk of Court.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think I've met all of you and I've sworn at all of you, so, or you couldn't be here. So I did not do a PowerPoint because I'm not very good at PowerPoints, and I know in your materials, though, you do have a more detailed description of what my office actually does. Ashley did a great job shortening them and putting them into the departmental briefings, but there is a more robust one in terms of the not 850 duties. I did not list all 850 duties that my office has, but just the general stuff. But the thing that's important in my office is we're pretty much, our proposed budget is a level budget, with the exception of our contracts that have an uptick of 2%, 3%, and then we need a new server because we are continuing to back scan all of our data and all of our documents so that they're all going to be digital at some point. All our land records from 1888 to the present are in digital format. We are now currently working on our civil and criminal and probate matters to get those also all in digital format. What my vendor tells me is we're going to need a new server, and there's a $15,000 uptick in my budget for that possible server in the next fiscal year. One of the other things in your in your agenda packet was my staff organizational chart. When we are fully staffed, there are 9 of us, including myself, and that would be me, my chief deputy, and 7 deputy clerks. We are currently 2 down in my office. We unfortunately lost one of our senior members to cancer in July. She was a 20-year city employee when we lost her, and that was a big loss to our office. And in that same month, one of my other deputies went off to law school. So I have hired one. She will start on February 5th. Currently, I don't have anyone that I'm even interested in bringing in to interview for the second slot. And a large part of that, and I know this is my budget pitch, but here's my pitch to you. I have been turned down a lot because the starting pay in my office is very low. And that has been, through the 12 years, now this is my 13th year as clerk, it has been a problem where I hire them in at entry, I train them, and then they leave me for a higher paying job. So that's my short pitch. I will open it up to any questions at this point, but at this point, my biggest part of my budget is personnel. 7 of the positions, to include mine, are reimbursed to the city from the comp board. So all of us that are currently working right now, the city is getting money back from the comp board as reimbursement for those positions. So while in my budget, my personnel is the most expensive, the city is getting most of that back from the comp board. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you for that. So I'm assuming that the positions that you're describing in terms of the pay rates and so forth are going through the class and comp study?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Every one of the positions except myself. The clerk of court is an unclassified position, but my chief deputy is in the supervisory track, and then all 7 of my other staff are in the big general pool, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and without going into it here, I'm assuming there are conversations happening between you and city manager and others in terms of what's the appropriate pay rate, I guess, for the folks that you're trying to hire and retain.
So I will have to say, HR and city management and budget have been remarkably helpful in my endeavors to get my staff paid adequately, or, paid what they actually do.
Sure.
I have folks in my office that have been with me for longer than I've been clerk. So I guess they're not with me. They've been with the clerk's office since longer than I've been clerk. And I could not do it without them, certainly, with all their institutional knowledge. But HR, city manager, budget have been remarkably helpful as I go through the stages of how to get my staff paid adequately.
Got it. Thank you. And then the money for the server, is that like a locally housed server, or is it something on the cloud that you're having to
So currently,
rent?
So redundancy is what they tell me as clerk. Because if we ever have a disaster, I want to be able to be up and running because I have all the land records in this town. So my vendor currently has a server in Ohio, and we also have a server here locally. It backs up every night so that when we scan things into our records, at night it backs up. So theoretically, tomorrow, if everything disappeared, my vendor can get me up and running relatively quickly as long as I have a computer and a place to plug in.
So the money you're asking for would replace the server that you have?
Yes, it's about 8 years old, and I'm told 7 to 9 years is about the lifespan of a server in the way that we're using it.
Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
You would know better than me.
No, I wouldn't, actually. I'm just a construction person, but I would think that for computery related, 8 years seems like it's a long time.
It's a long time. Yeah.
So, Lizette, I just had one question about, I've done some work with your office as far as getting voter and going through the voters and registration for when people sign up for court. And it has been an issue with the mailing, and I know this is not anything we can control or anything, but a lot of times it's on the reliability of people getting the notices and things like that. Is anything you have planning to do about that? Has it gotten better?
Are you asking about cases or the jury stuff?
The jury, that's what I'm thinking of.
It's both, obviously. So for the jury stuff, it is a concern for me because it's a waste of taxpayer dollars. I send out roughly about 5,000 jury summons in October, November for the following year for the jury pool. We get about half of that back. And then we get a bunch that are undeliverable. And the postage we use for that is obviously taxpayer money, and that's a lot of postage for undeliverable. The clerks in Virginia have talked about electronic service. The problem, of course, is not everybody has a computer, and certainly Charlottesville is very Wi-Fi capable, but a lot of the areas in Virginia are not. So it's not something that is gaining traction, understandably. We've been lucky with our jury service. people who do come, they want to serve for the most part. It is something David and I, we play around. David is my chief deputy. We play around with databases because the state allows us to use voter and DMV, which is what we use right now. We at one point also experimented with using our public utilities, and IT here in the city was very helpful with getting us that list. But then that also has its downside because there are landlords who don't live here in the city of Charlottesville, so we're not getting people who live in the city because the bill is to their landlords. So again, we're not getting everyone we could get. Someone suggested real estate tax sort of a list that Jason would have. Again, I don't want just landowners on my jury. I want everybody on our jury. We have a lot of people who rent in this city, so I don't just want a database full of landowners. So different challenges, different times, and it keeps the day exciting and not the same every day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commonwealth's Attorney.
Good afternoon. Ms. Oshrin, welcome. I don't think we've met. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you as well.
Congratulations, Mayor Wade, and
Thank you.
congratulations, Vice Mayor Pinkston. So I'd like to take, I know we have 10 minutes, I'd like to take just a couple minutes. I'm always surprised that people don't really understand what a prosecutor's office does. So I just did a one-pager just to go over quickly what we do as an office so that people are aware. I think we are not requesting any additional funds. It's a level funding request, so I don't really have a budget presentation, but I'm going to take a couple minutes, if it's all right, just to let you know what our office does. So we cover all three courts: Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court, where we prosecute intimate partner violence cases, anything where a child is a victim, and then anything where a juvenile is charged. In most of our juvenile prosecutions, we have an eye towards diversion and not prosecution. We handle General District Court 5 days a week, which is criminal, traffic, and felony preliminary hearings. We're also in Circuit Court, which is felonies, probation violations, and misdemeanor appeals. So most people sort of stop there and say, well, the prosecutors just go to court and that's all they do. Well, there's an expectation in our office and in this community that we do a lot more than that, and we embrace that. So we have two working groups that our office staffs: the MDT, the multidisciplinary team. That's a group that gets together and staffs cases where children are the victims of crime and they're investigated and a decision is made whether or not to prosecute and make sure services are provided. There's a SART team, a local SART team, a sexual assault resource team. That's for cases involving survivors of sexual violence. We have a pretty robust diversionary program in this community. We've got the drug treatment court, and we staff the board and manage the docket. It's the second oldest drug treatment court in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We've got the therapeutic docket, which is for misdemeanors involving mental health, behavioral health issues. We are on the board and manage that docket along with Albemarle County. We are in our third year of a local restorative justice program, Central Virginia Community Justice, and we're on the advisory board for that. I'm really pleased with how that program is developing. We also are part of an evidence-based decision-making policy team. We're working with various stakeholders and the police department to look into the feasibility of a LEAD program, which is a law enforcement assisted diversion program where police are able to send someone to services and not even arrest them and pull them into the court system. That's pretty sticky and complicated. Chief Kachis, who's here, is supportive of it, but there's a lot of details to iron out. But that is something our community is looking at. We provide various services to the community. Anyone that's a victim of a crime or a witness to a crime, we help with protective orders, expungements, restoration of rights to possess a firearm, and driver's license restorations. We do all that free of charge. We're also involved in trainings and teachings throughout the Commonwealth. We're going to get back to roll call trainings with the police department twice a month. COVID interrupted that, and you've heard the great work the chief's done with the department, and there's approximately 30 new patrol officers that are going to be hitting the streets, and we want to make sure they understand policing, but also I know it's important to our office and to Chief Kachis that they understand policing in this community and the expectations of this community, which might be different than other places. Members of the office serve on statewide faculties for CLE presentations, train new prosecutors, train folks learning how to do homicide cases. We're always asked to speak at both the yearly conferences statewide for prosecutors, Spring Institute and Summer Conference, and we have members of the office that teach at the University of Virginia School of Law, Trial Ad, and the Prosecution Clinic. We also review all body-worn camera footage that's captured by police officers in the field. They changed the discovery rules recently. We always had open file going back to Dave Chapman, my predecessor. We always gave everything to the defense attorneys, but they formalized it now, and so a lot of it's electronic, so we've got to organize and transmit and have protective orders for police reports, videos, photographs. So that's quite a bit of work that our office engages in. We hire and supervise law students year-round. We do extensive and regular community outreach. We're on call 24/7. The police department's great when they have someone in the field with a question or a detective. They call our on-call phone. I'm really pleased with the relationship we have with the Charlottesville Police Department. It's really strong, and I'm really pleased. Mr. Snook mentioned some of the laundry list of things that you accomplished, but among your great hires, you did a great job with Chief Kotchis. Our office has really enjoyed working with him and his department, and I'm not saying that just because you're here. Okay. We do civil commitment hearings in circuit court, extraditions and governor's warrants. I learned this when I took office. I got a phone call about an election law question. I'm like, why are you calling me? And they're like, well, that's your job. You've got to figure out the enforcement investigation into any claims involving election law and election law violations. So work with Taylor. We've had a bunch of cases come up, and the state police come in if we need something investigated. We also have someone that serves as a special assistant United States attorney if a Charlottesville case needs to be given attention in federal court. And then we're asked to serve as special prosecutors throughout the Commonwealth by different circuit court judges. So I just wanted to take a moment to let you know the good work that's being done by my colleagues in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. It's a great shop, and we've got really good people. So with that, I'll yield the remainder of my time for any questions y'all might have.
So I was curious, I didn't know that y'all were on call 24/7. So it's like you have someone just like, okay, it's your slot to be, to have your pager or phone available if someone has a, issue comes up.
Yes, we have an office on-call phone, but the detectives and the officers are great. They have all of our cell phones, and yeah, they don't hesitate to call, but yeah. And most stuff happens at about 2 or 3 in the morning.
Jeff, you had to, just sort of on your radar things that, over the next 6 months to a year that you're especially sort of seeing as, either opportunities or threats, things that you could, be really positive for the community or things we'd really have to address in terms of the work that you do. Is there anything that rises to the top of your mind that you think would be worth us knowing about?
Yeah, I think what people have to understand is when our office gets involved, something's happened. So it's a bit of a limited toolbox when an event has happened and someone is charged with a crime. So again, that's kind of reactive. And so to me, thinking more broadly, including our office and challenging our office to think about this too, but as a community being proactive in developing relationships on the front end before anything happens. Mm-hmm. And if we can get a phone call or, someone can call and say, this house is a problem, or this, this young person maybe is starting to drift a little bit. If we have strong relationships, and that's why our office is really involved in, it's not just community policing, but community prosecution. Our prosecutors are evaluated at the end of the year on what community outreach they did, like specifically list where you went, when, what did you do, who'd you talk to, what relationships did you form. So I think that, I'm not sure if we can get better at it, but I think we need to continue to relentlessly prioritize relationships in this. It's a small town. Sure. It's a really small town. Yeah. And a lot of times people know something that might happen or someone who needs a little extra attention before something happens. So I think if we all kind of grab an oar and pull in that direction, that's something that's might be aspirational, but I think it's really important.
Thank you.
Anyone else with any questions?
That is not what they call a hot bench, Mr. Snook. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Revenue.
I thought y'all were saving the best for last, but not quite.
We are.
So I walked into that.
You did.
We're saving the last for last.
The last one. Thanks for having us here. Councilor Oshman, welcome. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, congratulations. Glad to have everybody back. So I like PowerPoints. I used to teach, so I like PowerPoints. Is this gonna go? Yeah, so I don't think there's a lot here that you don't know about what we do. You know, we administer a number of tax programs for the city, particularly business taxes and personal property tax, and we also administer 3 very popular relief programs for the city. This is a listing of my staff. I don't expect you to remember these folks, but you know, they do deserve a great deal of credit. I depend on them quite a bit. There are 14 of us when we're full strength. These folks are the backbone of the operation, and you know, I'd be lost without them, and we'd all be lost without them. So I wanted to give them a shout out. Just quickly, the city manager had asked all the department heads to put together a work plan, you know, for the next few years. We took that seriously. We went ahead and did it. These come from our work plan, our internal work plan, where we kind of lay out our products and services and who our stakeholders are. You know, it's mostly taxation, revenue type stuff, customer service, and relief programs. We serve the citizens of the city, and we also consider ourselves to serve the other departments of this city, and you know, if we can help out other localities, we do. The Commissioner Revenue Association of Virginia is a very strong, robust organization. We get a lot of information from other commissioners. We share readily with other commissioners. It's a good system. Excuse me. We're putting in a few initiatives as part of our work plan. We're in the process of implementing a tip line. We got a tip today on an untaxed vehicle that we're looking into. You know, when you see untaxed property, you need to let us know, because everybody's supposed to carry the same burden. So, and we mean that. We're working on some records management, which is holdover from some of the water damage that took place last year. We're in a good place with that. I've got a new staff person who is taking the lead on our digital storage with Laserfish. He's getting pretty savvy with it, and we're in a good place with that. One of our major points of emphasis in my office is to make sure that people get trained and they get the knowledge and the experience that they need. So we have a very robust education program along with the Commissioners Association, and we want to try to work to make sure that all of my deputies are, at some point, become master deputy commissioners. Another initiative we're trying to get as many of our services online to be self-service as possible. We've already got, you know, a bunch of forms on there that you can fill out and submit, you know, if you've got a disposal of a vehicle or if you've purchased a vehicle. But we're trying to get as many things on there as possible. And then finally, I haven't really spoken with this to the communications director, but we are really going to try to get some press out about the relief programs this year, particularly real estate tax relief, which is starting very soon. We've got some new parameters, and there's kind of a new way we're going to do that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Challenges. I've got a bunch of people that are going to retire very soon. My chief deputy is supposed to retire this year. I've got a couple of others that I expect to come within the next few years after that. That is going to be difficult because that is a ton of institutional knowledge. These folks have been here longer than I have. They taught me how to do my job. So when they're gone, it's going to be really, really tough. The next probably big challenge we have is software. We're kind of struggling with some of our software. I don't want to get in the weeds with it. Today's a good example of that. Every 1st of January, we struggle with some of the software not updating to the new year, and so we have to kind of wrangle with that, and so that's something that I was dealing with today. We've got several of our vendors who are pushing us to go to cloud-based services, which would be great, and they'll do what we want, but it will be an increase in costs, and so we're trying to keep an eye on that. J.D. Power, who provides our vehicle valuation service, has changed its model. They're still going to provide values for us, but it's going to cost more, and that's going to be something felt by every locality around the state. Luckily, our software provider has a pretty good relationship with J.D. Power, so it's going to hurt us a little less than others. And I built it into my budget proposal. And then finally, sort of an ongoing challenge that we always have is the General Assembly. We try to keep an eye on that at the beginning of the year. I'll go down to Richmond for a few days. There's a ton of turnover in the General Assembly this year, and so we expect a lot of crazy new bills and people to try new things, and they need sort of a gentle education on, why this or that may not work. Airbnb. This is a snapshot of my budget. My budget's essentially flat. You'll see in the far right that the amounts that we have for other and contractual are quite a bit different than from the prior year. We moved some things around into different GL categories, but the amounts are essentially the same. So instead of calling them service contracts, I think we're calling a lot of it software maintenance and things like that. But the big number's the same. This is a snapshot of our relief programs. On the left, you've got real estate, tax relief for elderly and disabled, rent relief for elderly and disabled. Is that it? Yeah. And then on the right is the CHAP program. And so you can see how much we spend on that. And the city of Charlottesville is in the lead on this sort of thing. No other locality in the state invests like the city of Charlottesville does in these sorts of initiatives to ensure that folks have housing. You should be proud of that. One thing I know you guys are going to be interested in, this past year I had you all approve triennial application for real estate tax relief. So this will be the first year that we do that, and this is one of the things that we're going to try to get the word out on. What that means is if you applied last year and your name begins with A through G, you will need to apply this year. If your last name begins with H through Z, you don't need to apply this year. You do need to recertify. You need to reach out to us. And we're sending a big mailer out that explains all of this very, very soon. But it should be a little bit easier for folks to kind of re-up. You don't have to come in and provide all the documents every single year. It's once every 3 years. If you didn't apply last year, if you've never been in the program, you still need to apply. So that's what the chart on the left stands for. The chart on the right, you also approved a mechanism to increase the income threshold that is dependent on the average income in the city, and so these are going to be the tiers for this year. The maximum income for, it's actually going to be for CHAP and for real estate tax relief, is going to be $61,650. That's for a household. You guys usually ask questions about that, so I'm trying to head that off. I made one new request that's not reflected in the budget numbers you just saw. We would like, in conjunction with Neighborhood Development Services, we really need to get a better handle on these short-term homestays, and there are some software providers out there that have some packages that would help with this quite a bit. There's a number of different companies. We don't know who we would go with. There would be a bidding process or something, but this is what we think it would cost, about $5,000 up front and then $30,000 maintenance annually. And they do a lot of things. They do some monitoring services. Depending on what you spend, you can get more and more help. They have some basic services to just kind of give you addresses, but then they've got other services that will actually go out and scrub for new addresses, once a week or once a month or something like that. They can also handle, and if you go that far, they can handle nuisance complaints for your zoning people. So it's just something, and this would be shared between our two departments.
Todd, what do we do now to manage this? Is it just sort of catch as catch can? Or?
Yeah, it really is. A couple of years ago, the General Assembly changed the rules so that online intermediaries, is what they call these platforms, are supposed to provide localities once a month with the list of addresses and the list of, and the gross receipts associated with each address. Can you guess which online platform is not doing it? You can probably guess, and that is the vast majority of them. That's the lion's share. They just said, we're not doing it.
Really?
Yeah, they've put forward some arguments about Fourth Amendment. I don't want to get into it on TV, but yeah. So they're not, in our view, they're not following state code. So we don't have the addresses that we need. The only way to get them would be to go out and manually, scrub these websites, and it's just not. It's not an efficient use of time or resources.
So it seems like this $30,000 investment is just that. It would be recouped many times over.
Yeah, it would. Yeah. I mean, it
seems like a no-brainer.
Now, so they are paying. I mean, the intermediaries are all paying, even the one that I alluded to. But we have no idea if what that particular company, if what they're paying is what they owe, because they won't give us any data.
I see.
And so this would be a way to kind of help with that.
Okay.
But yes, it would be paid for. It's already paid for, essentially.
So would this software allow you to go after the property owner, or would you go through that third party?
It would allow us to go to the property owner. Yeah. If the company in question would provide the data that state code says they're supposed to provide, we wouldn't have to go to the property owner quite so much. I mean, they'd still have to, probably get a business license depending on how much activity they're doing, things like that, and business tangibles, but it would make things a lot easier for a lot of people.
I think that the county is using one now that's very, it's very good, as I understand it.
Yeah, a lot of localities are. I mean, but it's an expense that you don't want to have to do. The other thing that I'm going to propose is to make a couple of changes. I guess you could call them housekeeping changes to the rental relief for elderly and disabled. We haven't tweaked that program in a number of years. I'd like to increase the maximum rents that we'll look at, that a person pays out of pocket that they get credit for. Would like to look at increasing the benefit grant itself from $1,500 to $2,000. That'd be the maximum grant that anybody could get. And we'd like to increase the income threshold to match the way we do it for real estate tax relief and CHAP. So it would be $61,650 this year if we did it. I think it's time to do that, and that would be a minimal impact on the budget. Has anybody got any questions?
Nope. Thank
What
you.
did you teach?
I taught middle school civics and economics.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Jason. Oh, Jason and Chad. How about that?
What is going on?
Tag team.
That's right. Good evening. My name is Jason Vandiver. I'm the city treasurer for the city, and we are going to be tag teaming. So I brought Chad Thorne with me as the chief deputy treasurer for the city. And just by way of providing a little bit of background, I've been with the city since 2008, served as treasurer for the last 11 years or so. And Chad has actually been with the city for 20 years. He started in Public Works and then came over to work in the treasurer's office for the last 10 years, 10 10.25, right?
10.25.
So he's been with the treasurer's office more now than he has been with Public Works, so. So just a quick overview of what we're going to be covering this evening for you. We're going to do some staff introductions. We brought a few people from our office, talk a little bit about our office responsibilities, briefly discuss our budget request, and then we wanted to highlight a few areas of focus that you may or may not be familiar with in our office, and then we'll wrap it up. So I just wanted to note, I think one of the things that's somewhat unique about our office, we're relatively small. We had 14. We've added a City Hall ambassador position, which brings us to 15. So that's a new responsibility that we've taken on. But I think the breadth of the services that we provide, the interactions that we have with other departments is quite remarkable. And we'll be going into those details as the presentation moves forward. So what we have here is just the mission statement for the Treasurer's Office. So we exist to promote the financial health of the city through professional collection, processing, and investment of revenue. So just to touch on each of those briefly, these are kind of the things that you think of when you think of the City Treasurer's Office and taxes, but we do collect city revenue in the form of taxes and other fees. Primarily that falls into real estate and personal property, which account for just about half of the city's general fund budget. When it comes to processing payments, we process hundreds of thousands of payments each year. We track those. We track our cashiers for their accuracy, and we even track, the phone calls that come in. There's thousands of phone calls that come in, and we take pride in the responsiveness rate, and so that's something that we're constantly monitoring to make sure that we're answering the phone, that we have enough people on the phones to answer those questions, especially during tax deadline and those busy seasons. So. As far as investments go, that's something that we update you all on quarterly with the city manager's financial report. So we're going to kind of skip over that as we recently have given an update on that. So with that, I will turn it over to Chad to discuss the next slide.
All right. So we do this through 4 specific work areas. The administration group is sort of unofficial. It's Jason, myself, and our administrative assistant, and that's where all of your general admin stuff happens: contracting, procurement, payroll, reporting, any sort of planning we might do. We also maintain state office accreditation and certifications for all of our employees through our Treasurers Association. And then we're going to do a little introduction. So customer service is a work group of now 5 people. That's where the ambassador is going to be a part of. And that is where you're going to get all of your in-person payment services. They also provide the DMV Select services, and that's led by Natisha Barber. She was hired in 2012 in Public Works, and shortly after I came over to the Treasurer's Office, she also came. Joined us in 2014. And then we have our Revenue Compliance Division. This is the group that they handle the phone services. So everything you can't do in person, when you call, you're going to get a person in this group, and they're handling the calls for just about everything in the city, including whether or not we sell tickets to the pavilion. We don't.
But you're right there.
Yes. So they also handle all of our collections actions. They set up payment plans for customers. They do the billing, and they provide another very popular service, the passport applications. That's managed by Elle Dooms. She joined us in 2015, and we were lucky to get her. She wanted to be with the city because her husband, Cliff, is also an employee of the city. And then the back office, that's DeBeba Johnson's area. She started with the city in 2004. I think she's held every position in our department. This is where all of the reconciliation happens on the back end. So it's basically our last line of defense before we have any issues with money to the bank or money that shouldn't go somewhere, making sure that everyone's dotted their I's and crossed their T's financially. And one other just quick note about DeBeba herself and then an employee on Natisha's staff. We do have translation services available basically all day, every day. DeBeba provides it in Spanish, and Natisha's employee provides it in 3 different Middle Eastern languages, and this has been a huge help to the community, sort of navigating and understanding not just how do I pay a tax bill, but what is a tax bill? So that's been a huge benefit for us. And I think, your turn.
Okay. So we share in common with the other people who have presented tonight that some of our funding does come from the state, and with that there are certain state mandated functions. In the state code it says the treasurer shall, and there's a list of things that we're responsible for. So a lot of those are the ones that you would think of: tax-related duties, billing personal property and real estate, collecting other city taxes, processing state and estimated income taxes. Some people elect to pay those locally. Some of the other state mandated duties, banking reconciliation, disbursements, payroll, payment processing, those sorts of things. And then some other one-offs that just sort of randomly got assigned to the treasurer, like dog tags. If you have a dog, you're familiar with those. And then also reporting unclaimed property. So if we issue a check to somebody or a payment to a vendor and they never cash that, there's a very complex set of rules that we have to follow to report that to the state and try to make a best effort to get that back to the citizen or vendor who is owed that money. So it works both ways. So we do collect taxes, but we try to make sure people get unclaimed property when that's applicable. So I think Chad is going to talk a little bit about the other city functions now.
Yeah, so under the program administration section, those first 3 bullets highlight areas where we are sort of the face of and the voice of these programs, but we don't run these programs. So if we're talking about trash stickers and decals, that service is provided by Public Works or their contractor for the collection, but the city does a really good job of offering a lot of options for people so they can balance whether they want something that's convenient, whether they want something that's cost efficient, but it also is a very complex area where you have 4 different sizes of trash can, different ways to pay for that, 3 different sizes of recycling container, and all of that's happening at the front counter on the phone. And most people do not know what size trash can they have, but they certainly find out when they hear about the difference in cost. So if we're looking at, and that's all done in-house, so those renewal notices that go out every year, Natisha puts those together and we send those out, and we handle that all internally. Excuse me. Zone parking, that's managed by the traffic engineering division, traffic engineering group in Public Works. But that's something that we also handle internally. We sell them. These are the ones that you hang on the front of your car or you put on the back of your bumper. That's something that we probably would like to update, but time and energy haven't allowed for that, especially as we see new developments come in the area. We're seeing more issues with long-term residents having trouble with parking. We see that there was a trial zone permit that was a 6-month trial implemented, I think, 8 years ago. It's still a trial. So it just, with everyone's responsibilities, we haven't had the ability to really move that forward. And then parking tickets, they're issued by the police department, but the process, by and large, is managed on our end. We're the ones who issue I guess if you would call them the invoices when people don't pay their tickets. They come into our office to pay them. Then there's the appeals process and the waiver process. So the police department makes the determination, but we handle the communication with the customers for those situations. And then we're also, fiscal agent for city schools, KTEC, and JMRL. That's where the cash management group is working closely with them, basically day in and day out on the accuracy of their financial reporting.
And then a few other city functions. I'll touch on 2 of these. Well, I'll cover all these actually. So the utility billing department, they mail out their bills, so gas, sewer, and water, and we do all the payment processing for them. So that's sort of a joint effort. And we also bill and collect the stormwater utility fee as well. So just wanted to highlight that. And some of the other ones, retirement fund investment, so somewhat unique to the city of Charlottesville. Most localities are a part of VRS, the Virginia Retirement System. The city runs its own retirement system, and one of the duties of the treasurer is to act as the plan custodian, as well as serving on the retirement commission. So that's something else that we do in our office that takes a fair bit of time, as well as working with the budget office to help prepare and monitor the healthcare and retirement budgets. So just wanted to highlight those.
And then we have the fun stuff. So DMV Select is a service we started in 2019. This has been a huge hit with the public. People really like the fact that they do not have to go to Pantops and they do not have to wait in the line. Typically, when we first started, there were wait times as we learned the process, and people really jumped on, excited to come wait in our office for 30 minutes instead of an hour and a half or 2 hours there. Most of our transactions are registrations or titling transactions. One benefit that we've seen come out of this from a collection standpoint is that often someone will come in to get their registration renewed, and then they can't because a stop has been placed on that at DMV. They're able to pay their taxes at one end of the counter and then go back to DMV to get their tags, and they go on their way. That typically takes 5 to 10 minutes. And what we hear from other localities in the area that when customers run into these issues, that can be a 1 to 2 business day situation. So that's been a great benefit for the community. Passports also started in 19. You were really eager that year. So this, one thing we really like is that we have online scheduling that we can manage, and we're very flexible about appointment times and working with customers when they would need them. We recently had an audit, and we had, I think he couldn't technically give us a grade, but he said we were an A-. We only had 5 passport applications that we issued that needed any sort of follow-up from the Department of State. And we've done special events with actually Lizelle when she was the leader of the orchestra at CHS. Yes, we did a special event with them, and we've done special events with UVA too, also getting their staff passports. And then online payments, you know, it's increasing and it continues to increase. Challenges here are sort of funding. You know, there's a cost to do that business. And each department, as they come to us with their business needs, everybody's got a little bit different need, a little bit different thing that they want on their invoice, and the systems aren't always easily configurable. But we do our best, and in the last year or two, we've added invoice types for the police department, for FOIA, for traffic engineering, and then NDS with their new system up.
So just quickly, I think there are 2 slides left, just a quick overview of our budget request. So on the left, you can see Treasurer's Office funding, just showing that there are a variety of sources of funding for our department. I mentioned the state earlier, so about 13% of our funding does come from the state, about 12% from non-general funds, that's utilities, a very small portion from DMV Select and Passports. Again, that's primarily a customer service function that we provide, not necessarily a revenue driver. And then about 70% does come from the general fund. And if you look at the program administration, it's fairly equally split between billing and collections, payment processing, and then banking and investment services, with a smaller allocation of time to DMV, Passports, and then internal services, like Chad was mentioning, to other departments. So just a quick explanation of budget drivers and priorities. The budget drivers, similar to other things that you've heard this evening, personnel cost, of course, software, contractual obligations, and then increased postage cost and mailing. So that's one of the reasons we're really trying to drive the online bill presentment, is that there are some cost savings there as well as efficiencies. So you want to talk a little bit about priorities for the next year?
Yeah, so one big priority is the remodel of the lobby and our office space that was affected by the Great Flood of 2023. They are working fast and furious. They are here early every day and late every day and knocking that out. And we're currently working with the Facilities Development Group and all of their contractors and subs to work through picking carpet and tile and colors and furniture and all of those things. It's a nice break to the day. We hope to be back in our offices in the spring. That's sort of what we've been told, and it seems like that's going to happen.
Just out of curiosity, is there anything that you'd been wanting to do for the last 10 years that this now gives you the opportunity to do?
I get a window.
So yes, that's what we're doing.
Yes, and we had a major purge. That was also nice. Great 10-year-old spring cleaning. And then the ambassador, that's a new position for us. It's not one that we had initially proposed, but in talking to the city manager and the deputy city manager, we worked out a plan for that position to really sort of be sort of the face and the traffic flow and information flow for the whole city. Configuration of City Hall is not ideal, so that's really going to help with that. And we have some plans and ideas that we're working on, so this is not just a person that's going to sit at a desk waiting. We're going to look for ways that we can make sure that this person supports the city as a whole and not just the treasurer's office. I think one of those things we're talking about is taking over the mail responsibilities from IT, which is a really sort of random thing. And we've got some other ideas that we need to go over with the city manager.
Yep. And then the last two initiatives, the second bullet point there, new debt management software implementation. That's a joint project with the budget office. And it's a really neat tool that I think you're probably going to see pretty soon once it's ready. But it's going to help us manage our payments. It's going to be a real-time updating, when we make a payment, the exact amount that's outstanding for the city, and break it down with interest and principal and across programs. So that's going to be a really neat tool that later this year is going to roll out. And then the last one, just an effort there around engagement, employee appreciation, and wellness initiatives as part of the city manager's work plan. That's something that our office has been involved in, and we have some ideas that we're working on how to incorporate that in unique ways within our department, and see if there's a way to roll that into annual goals and performance measures and that sort of thing. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions you have. There's our contact info.
I had no idea y'all had your fingers in all of these things. It's really remarkable. How do you interact and engage with procurement, for example? That's under Chris Cullinan, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we just like any other department would. We don't have any unique responsibilities with procurement, but we do work with them regularly on all our contracts.
But I guess if there's any sort of external financial contact, as it were, between the city and some outside entity, like cutting a purchase order, does that happen through y'all?
So we'll get a lot of those. So, any department that's making a payment by check, that's going to get printed in our office. A lot of the larger projects, are paid electronically through wire, ACH. So ultimately, that's coming to our desk, and we have an approval process that we go through to make sure that we're paying the right person and that sort of thing. So in that regard, we do work with them.
I see.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Anyone
Other
else?
questions?
I'll say that I've been on the Retirement Commission for 2 years now. I've been very impressed with, your work and the work of others to take care of the city's retirees. I wonder sometimes, I'm sure you wonder whether, boy, it'd be nice to outsource this to VRS, but I'll say that what y'all do is pretty impressive.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you being on the commission the last 2 years.
One thing I wanted to add, I said this to a group that Todd had me addressing a couple weeks ago, but I have really appreciated during COVID the efforts of you all, both Todd and you, Jason, and others, in keeping us on track with expected revenues, expected costs, so that we knew, were we budgeting correctly given all of the uncertainties. The only thing we knew about COVID was we didn't know what the heck was happening. And you all came up with a set of projections that got revised with some frequency and gave us conservative projections so that we did not find ourselves in the same position that a lot of other jurisdictions did, where they sat there and they said, gee, it's April, we don't have any money for May or June. And we were never in a position like that, and that's because not only the efforts of you all, but also the efforts of the city manager staff and budget office and so on in making sure that we were behaving responsibly in light of all of the uncertainties. But that started with the projections and the revenues that you all were telling us we were going to get. And I really appreciated over those few years knowing that one thing I didn't have to worry about was whether the projections were ridiculously optimistic.
You're welcome.
Well, there's at least one jurisdiction around here that balanced its budget by claiming that speeding fines were going to go up 7-fold. And when it didn't go up 7-fold, they suddenly had a problem. So we were not in that boat because we had folks doing what they should be doing, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
I have a quick small question. For the online payments, you have a year-over-year adjustment, but do you happen to know about how much it is overall? Like, how much room is there left to grow for that?
You know, it's interesting. It's different for each payment type. You know, I think we've seen the adoption rate on utility bills is probably higher because that's something that somebody's getting every month in the mail, and they're like, gosh, I really would like to get this online. And so the adoption rate for that is higher, whereas the tax bills, you get it twice a year, and you might pay it and not think about it. So I could certainly get that breakdown and share it with everybody. Yeah.
Thanks.
Mhm. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks.
So I would definitely like to just say thank you to our constitutional officers and our voter registrar for your presentations this evening. This does conclude the round of budget presentations that we brought before you all as a part of our budget process. I thought I would stop at this moment and just say, is there anything you have a question about from all those many presentations that were made to you? I would assume you probably already asked me about them, and we're working on it, but just wanted to do that as well. But with no closed meeting, is there a motion for us to stand in recess until 6:30 p.m.?
So, second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, City Council is now in recess. We'll return at 6:30. For those joining by Zoom, there is a separate link for the 6:30 meeting, and your new mayor will be presiding at that time.